Shadow Raven, did you just do like a quote from The Cure in my chat? Because if so, you're my new favorite person. Yay, Robert Smith. Robert Smith saves the world. You remember that South Park episode with the Mecha Story Sand? Anyway, hi everybody. It's Pro Tips. It's Friday. Welcome back. I'm Anne. I'm here mostly here. Thanks, Margaret. It's good to see you. Your painting is getting so good. Keep it up. Like, seriously. I'm so proud of you. M. Fontana with this sub, 19 months. Super. You're getting close to your sub and a half, or no, your double sub anniversary. Hey, Bob and Julie, it's good to see you. Yeah, I know, right? Like, Robert Smith is such a weirdo because, like, he'll do the very dark, depressing music and then he goes, hi, I'm doing pop. But that was The Cure, right? They were so versatile. So, anyway, they were my favorite band in high school and college. I had a concert t-shirt, you know, I was all that. I knew all the band members' names, although most of that's leaked out of my brain because we all know when we don't need it anymore, our brain frees up RAM and long-term storage for, I don't know, crazy crap it wants to remember from our childhood. I was like, why do we remember what we remember, right? So, hey, good morning. It's one of those random Ann days. We're on a random Ann day. Random. Ann is feeling random. Be warned. Oh, homesick. Oh no, I hope you feel better, Kelsey. Nice taste of music. Thanks, Planer. Yeah, I was the kid in high school in the 80s that was not into 80s pop. I was actually into alternative rock. So I watched 120 Minutes with Dave Kendall. Wasn't he dreamy? And cause British accent. So yeah, me and my boyfriend would go and we'd just watch 120 Minutes and, you know, we'd talk music and that was our music. And we listened to like totally different music from everybody else until 1989, which is when New Order and The Cure and, you know, a whole bunch of like alternative bands, REM, became mainstream. And then everybody was listening to the music we were listening to, going, who are these guys? It was funny. Oh, was it? Was his birthday earlier this week? Aw, that's fantastic. If I would have known, I would have wanted to play The Cure too. Oh, wow. Cats and citrus. It's like cats and cucumbers. Yeah. Yes, very much, Deborah. Very much. There are just some days where my brain is like, wee, and this is one of those days. All right, coolly. Let's do Sphinxy. So I still like how I've got some light going on the top there, but I need to be more consistent with it now so that it actually looks correct. But our color was Osirian Sand and NMM Gold highlight, so I'm going to grab some of that out. Although I don't know. Oh, my Osirian Sand is probably living over with my other model. 1 second. Must retrieve desert color. No, wrong. Yes, right. I just need, like, another bottle of this, really. I may have ordered one. I probably should check that. I do need to order more Osirian Sand. Oh, it's on my list. That's it. I've got my list over here. Because, you know, I just put in a Reaper order, and now I need to do another Reaper order. And then, of course, our sand started out as desert stone and desert sand. So I do want to mix up a little bit of that, too. You always want to have a little bit of your base coat and your shadow at the same time as you're doing highlights, because inevitably you're going to need to touch something up, right? So you may as well just have it ready. It is extremely close. We're just working on the base, Lord Nobody. I want to do my highlighting and shading, and then I want to do some like hieroglyphs or paint work on it, just like the old tombs in the Valley of the Kings, where there were more sheltered areas. Now, this doesn't necessarily look like it's sheltered, so we can imagine that she's in a courtyard or something, right, where some of the paint would have lasted a little bit longer. But I used to love drawing hieroglyphs when I was a kid, so I'll probably put a Sphinx hieroglyph on the side and paint the pillars a little bit, put some chipped paint on the pillars. But we need to actually, if you're going to do that, it's just like when, do you guys remember when I was working on the ship's figurehead from Bones, the pirate ship figurehead? You really need to find a good real world reference to make it look correct. I know I repeat this 60 zillion times and you're all sick of hearing it, but when you're working on something that you want to look natural, it is always worthwhile to work from nature. Yeah, that sets up was here, right? Oh, the Shepherd Payne book, Shadow Raven? Because that is a really big book. coffee table extravaganza, but well worth it. Just very interesting. Hey Val, how's it going? Alrighty, so let's get our desert stone. And let's get our desert sand. And we'll get our brown liner, because that's all we were using. Feel free to ask random, not that you guys ever shy away from asking lots of random questions, but feel free to ask lots of random questions today, because we are going to be painting rocks, and I know that can get monotonous. Maybe I'll have to look up painted stuff. Maybe I should just highlight the front and then look up painted Egyptian stone. So I am the mistress of the Google search. Let's see what I get on this. Painted Egyptian stone. Sometimes I hate it when Google just grabs like it's like it grabs one word out of what you're asking for. Yeah, all right. There we go. So the problem is a lot of this is going to be like really vibrant still, because a lot of these panels are from interiors. Although you can kind of see places where the wall is rubbing away, right? So what that says to me is probably, since this will be exposed and outdoors, a lot of it would have chipped off. So I'll be probably using some stippling, like coming up into some of the colors to give the wall, to see that rubbed off wall thing. Pizza or tacos? I can't have pizza anymore, Chef of Love, because tomatoes. So it would have to be a pesto pizza, which I do like making. And David has a basil plant that I've been just kind of like staring at, thinking of slaughtering for pesto. So we'll see. Maybe pizza if I can make my own, but otherwise tacos, fish tacos, because fish tacos are awesome. So what you're looking for when you're trying to duplicate something found in nature is you're looking for a good real world example that kind of shows you what's going on. So essentially what this tells me is that I want to paint on or glaze on my color, and then I want to stipple my actual original stone color, interrupting some of that, like, and fade it out as much. I don't miss them, AZ. Like, they're my trigger for my health disorder, so I'm like, no way, can't have it. It's the one thing, though, when you have something like this, where you have an allergy or you have a medical reaction to something, honestly, I feel like you just need to refocus on what you can have. Like, all the foods I can still have that I love. So that, for me, it was an easy mental refocus. Yeah, I love fish tacos. Thanks, Cleo. Yeah, I don't like Alfredo sauce on pizza, but I do love pesto as a sauce on pizza. Unfortunately, it's super high calorie, so I haven't been doing it lately. But I don't know, I need to work with it, maybe mix in some other stuff. But yeah, so when we're doing this, when we're painting in stuff, then we need to remember these things. We need to stipple, probably. And of course, looking up this stuff also gives us a really nice look at colors that were used, right? So we've got essentially a deep green and a lighter green. We've got white, we've got a near black, probably is black, black being one of the easiest pigments to make. And then you've got that glorious, ochre color, and we've got the sun, that red oxide. So essentially, these are ancient pigments, right? And a lot of them are modern pigments are actually based on them. So red oxide, we still use an iron oxide. Like most of the browns in modern paints, in modern pigments, are iron oxide variants, because they come in yellow and red and a dark brown. So you have a lot of variants in the oxides, and they're pigments, colors that have been used since ancient times. So it's pretty cool that you can go and grab and, look at something that was painted in ancient Egypt, 4,000 years ago, and see the same kind of pigment colors that we're still using today. Yeah, I mean, it's iron oxide. It's honestly, it's dirt color. I used to call them dirt colors in Ara. I still do sometimes. But yeah, a lot of browns now aren't actually, like, burnt umber isn't actually burnt umber anymore, or raw umber. It's just a different variant of brown oxide that's been treated so that it acts like brown umber, because iron oxide is so much cheaper to manufacture and to use in paints. Oh, wow. That's actually a wonderful idea, Zuo. But I love pineapple on pizza. I am in camp pineapple for pizza. And I know that grosses many people out, but I love sweet and savory. So sweet and tangy. Although I don't know if pineapple sauce would work. It'd be dessert pizza at that point. I don't know if I'm behind dessert pizza. But there are dessert tacos, so why not, really? Oh, yeah. Mummy Brown. Yeah, I know the pre-Raphaelites were so horrified when they found that out. Like, having read about that, that's kind of really funny. Nobody knew it. It was called Mummy Brown, but they didn't believe it. They didn't think that that was a real thing. Then they found out it was. And one guy, I forget, it wasn't Waterhouse, but it was one of the pre-Raphaelites. He actually, like, ceremonially buried his tube of Mummy Brown in his backyard. You gotta love it. It's like, I feel bad for those people, but, oh, you gotta love it. Yeah, Chef, I actually agree with you on there. Bacon, red onion, and pineapple. Is there really any food rules we haven't broken? But rules are made to be broken, right, Cleo? You learn how to make a great pizza so that then you can break the rules and make a great variant pizza. But yeah, props to that guy, right? Yeah, interesting, Zio. It's hard, right? Because pineapple is so sweet. Alrighty, let us get our yellow on. Oh, I don't know ancient Egyptian Tehran original. I used to play with hieroglyphics when I was a kid, a teenager. I like had memorized some of them, but I mean, a lot of hieroglyphics are like basic like noun structure, but then they also stand for phonetic sounds, so you can actually write names. I mean, the problem here is that if I put this to scale, the hieroglyphs would be tiny and we really couldn't do them justice. So I almost have to use them just in a decorative manner, which means I'm doing just like one or two in this panel, if I'm going to do it. Because otherwise it's going to be too big, too small. This scale is too small for hieroglyphs. For me to paint them anyway. Like, I'm sure you could sculpt them in. And then maybe you could paint them. I might be able to do something tiny, but I don't know. I would rather have it bold and then maybe chip it. Yeah, Chef, you are so right. You are so right. I do that all the time. Unless, actually, I'll give a qualifier to that. In learning to cook Indian, I stumbled across Rick Stein's book. He's a TV entertainer and chef from England. Rick Stein's India, I've not had to modify a single recipe except to get away from the tomatoes. Like, I have to sub peach and tamarind, or, I'm going to do some experiments with roasted red pepper instead of peach, or in addition to. But other than that, those recipes are like knock you on your butt good out the door. Like, I don't think I've ever had this experience with any cookbook other than like maybe Julia Child's, that it was just like, you just make it like they say it and it's fantastic. Thanks, Leo. Make 2 personal pizzas. Yeah, it's scale issue. If this was a really big model, like David has a really, really big bust. That's an undead Egyptian guy. So if he had room, I could do like tiny stuff on like his wrappings or something, to put magical Egyptian runes, i.e. hieroglyphs, on the stuff. But yeah, I don't think there's enough room really here to do a lot of that. So, okay, I was mixing up Osirian Sand and NMM Gold Highlight. Yeah, if you want to learn Indian cooking, like, there's definitely, like, I started with a simpler book, but if you're going in hardcore and you really want to get all those awesome Indian spices, our spice drawer is really full, and our spice drawer is an entire, like, long drawer. So, I don't even want to count. I've got at least 40 spices, I think. Like, and I used to like now I go to my mom's house and it's like she has nothing. It's just like, she has like oregano. It's like she doesn't have any. I've got 4 different kinds of chili powder. It's ridiculous. Because Rick Stein doesn't pull punches, or he does sometimes. He modifies some recipes for his British audience, but in general, he does, because you can get so much of the specialty Indian spices and stuff online now, or in local Indian grocery stores, he doesn't pull punches on a lot of it, and so you can... Hi.
You're talking about your Indian spice addiction?
Yes, I'm talking about my Indian spice addiction. David can vouch for this.
She's definitely not exaggerating.
But, But yeah, so I like that he will tell you to use tamarind water when, you know, some chefs would just say, oh, you could use a little tomato paste here. So I feel like I'm getting more of an authentic flavor from his stuff. And now I get frustrated with Indian cookbooks that take shortcuts. Yes, he was in and he was out, thanks to Sodoma. Yeah, leaving spices and blends, yeah. Well, because people they use salt and pepper, like, Rick Stein, the reason that I bought the cookbook was because he has an awesome documentary series called Rick Stein's India that is essentially him traveling through India and collecting recipes and interviewing the people about, you know, not about their culture, history, and food. So, it was, it inspired me, I guess. And one thing one of those people said, one of the Indian people said is that, and it really sounds right to me, especially now when I go back to like non-Indian recipes, but that a lot of our Western cooking is a one note, which means, you know, you've got your salt and pepper and butter and maybe some lemon, but then you've got rosemary, or you've got thyme, you know, or you've got chili pepper, you know, and you maybe see two spices combined every once in a while, but you really don't see something like Indian cooking, which has 5 different spices, 6, 8, 23. You know, it's insane. Yeah, Rick Stein's India. I have to say, like, we've made a couple of the fish curries, and I'm working my way through gonna start doing the chicken curries, and I haven't found a bad recipe. Like, we've found curries in there that we don't like as much as another curry I made, but it's just, his recipes just seem to be really good. And apparently he has a rep for that. Ah, well, but you can do it because I'm a wimp. So I don't put any of the, like I'll put maybe a tiny bit of fresh chilies in there. Now I've actually got Indian chilies frozen in my freezer. This is how out of control I've become, guys. But I make it it's never bland because you've still got the cinnamon, the ginger, the garlic, all of those spices in there, right? But you just would omit the Kashmiri chili powder or whatever. Oh yeah. And if your daughter also loves to cook, like it's a trip. And the photography is gorgeous. Like it's one of those coffee table cookbooks. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, so let's talk about what we're doing. We're going top down. Remember, we're kind of looking and seeing, so you can see the shadow painted in here. And I mentioned we do want it a little lighter at the bottom, so I'll probably add just a little bit of highlight down here because there's going to be light reflecting back up in a very warm way off of these rocks right here. We also mentioned that there was some treasure here, so I guess we do have to deal with that. Let's just block that treasure in right now before I forget, right? I keep picking up my bottle of rich leather and looking for my almost empty one and then realizing I destroyed it. Hey, Kentucky Fried Chicken was one of my favorites for a very long time. Yeah. Yeah, quail eggs, I agree with you, Shadow Raven. Yeah, you can totally leave the hot spices out and you'll still get the good experience from Indian food in general, I find. Because I do love the Kashmiri chili powder, though. It's a very mild chili powder, but it's got an excellent flavor. I've gotten kind of addicted to it. All right, so let's get a base coat. I'm going to use some rich leather to base coat this gold. I do need to mix up my brown liner now because I'm going to need to line around these. Sorry, guys. Woo. There's stuff in the air and it's attacking me today. Welcome to Steve's Day. Gesundheit to me. We always said Gesundheit when I was a kid because my family was German. It was like one of the only German things about us because otherwise we were just American. You know, we didn't really have a lot of ethnic stuff. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Ugh. Try to make sure my allergies are under control before I get on stream, but that was an attack sneeze. I couldn't resist that one. Thank you. Yeah, Gesundheit. Gesundheit. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I haven't been able to have KFC for a while because gluten-free, but it's still, I mean, Still was tasty. It's a tasty, tasty breading. Godzilla. Godzilla's a good substitute. Let's see. Where's my brown liner? Oh, it went hiding over here. It's hiding. It's trying to get back to David. Yeah, it's definitely, this state doesn't want to kill me as much as Wisconsin. Like, I'm allergic to the entire state of Wisconsin. California's not so bad, but the best allergy experience I ever had was when I lived on the East Coast, north of Baltimore, in Maryland. And I, didn't have allergies for, 10 months out of the 12 I was there. It was insanely good. I liked it there a lot. But... But I really like it here too. So I'm going to try to stick it out and convince the state that it doesn't want to kill me. I'm going to get in focus here, guys. There we go. Nice and in focus. Yeah, the pollen is crazy, but it wasn't something that I reacted to. So, I mean, not having to take an allergy pill for 10 months was insane. I never thought I would get there. Alrighty. Oh. So my Indian food addiction has gotten so out of hand that I ordered 2 baby curry plants so that I could grow them into bigger curry plants and not slaughter them, but pluck their leaves off periodically because it's an ingredient. Honey from local bees. Yeah, I hear that too, Lord Nobody. I don't know. My allergies are mild enough, and I take 1 Zyrtec a day, and for the most part, I'm fine. So I've never really had cause to experiment with the honey stuff. It does make sense. I wonder if they've actually done studies on that. I wonder how you would do a study on that. Yeah. You have itchy eyes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Texas is pretty bad. There were definitely seasons where I was, on 2 allergy pills a day. But it still wasn't as bad as Wisconsin. Because I think one of my allergies is mold. So after a rain... my allergies would really kick up in Texas. But Wisconsin, where I was moist all the time because I was either down southeast near Lake Michigan or I was up in Madison, which is on an isthmus. And so it was always living in a freaking swamp is how one of my friends described it. So Wisconsin really felt like the entire state. I was just allergic to Wisconsin, period. And here in California, it's actually pretty good. There's something out there that does try to kill me on occasion. That makes my throat really itch badly. Where I really have to come inside and take a Benadryl. But other than that one thing, because we have less rain here, I think I don't have quite as many allergies here as I did in Baltimore, or in Texas or Wisconsin. Baltimore still is the best one, though. East Coast. Beast Coast for the allergies. It's from nature, you're allergic to it. Oh no. It's a plant you're allergic to. That's so bad. I'm so sorry. Oh, Cleo. So this camera is the most awesome camera, and it is not cheap, but it is totally worth every penny, and I would buy another one. If this one broke, I would buy it in an instant. I don't care the cost. So it's IPEVO, I-P-E-V-O. And this is the VZX model, which is just, I don't remember if this has the wireless capacity. I think it does. I don't really need it, so you could get a cheaper model without wireless. But their document cameras are what they are. And they are just wonderful at getting in close on detail. I don't need it right now because I'm not doing real fine work. But if I need to, I can get super close. So that you guys can watch every tiny little brush stroke and see every little imperfection. Because it has the controls on the stock of the document camera, I don't ever need to go into software to change my settings. I can do it all right here. So there you go, Planer with the link. Thank you, Planer. Yeah, so during the pandemic, these actually ran out of stock because so many teachers needed them to teach classes. Because that's originally how I found it. Is I was looking for a document camera, and I was looking for maybe a little bit more modernized one than Reaper was using at the time, because Reaper had experimented with a slightly older model. And the teachers just gushed about this one because they said they could teach, 8 hours a day all the time, and the camera would just perform. And that's what I needed, right? I needed something really reliable that I could teach for hours at a time or stream for hours at a time and not have to worry about it. So I think mine was about $300. During the pandemic, they got up to $600. And then now I think they're back down to between 3 and 4. Yeah. No, I wouldn't go. I would go for the real doc cam. This is the real deal. If you are doing streaming or teaching or anything that requires you to get close in on detail, this is the dealio. I'm actually not a grandma, Ravi. Unless you're talking to Sphinx. Despite the silver hair, I have nieces and nephews, but no, I have no children. So I will only ever have dog grandchildren. So if you're counting my dog and her puppies, then yes, I have dog grandchildren. But other than that, and I have been painting miniatures since a very long time ago. And playing Dungeons and Dragons since a very long time ago. So I'm a very long-term nerd. But this means that I'm really good at it now. I don't know, Max. I could record this. That I do use OBS to stream. So through OBS, I could record and then probably grab stills from the video footage. I'd just have to do that in a different program. So whatever, it's like a regular camera. It's like it plugs into your USB, and then you have to use something else for actual streaming software to, make it go. But other than that, I'm not sure if you're not recording a video or a stream, I'm not certain that it has a capture ability. I kind of doubt it, because if a teacher wants to do that, they're going to make a slide, like they're going to take a separate picture of an example, but I don't know, maybe. Yes, I'm a well-practiced nerd, exactly. Fear the experienced nerds, right? Okay, so is this dirt or is this coins? I think those are coins. I hope I'm right, Julie. I hope you actually sculpted treasure down here. Can use other programs to grab stills. Yeah. Good point. So little tiny bits of treasure. And then we've got a jar here, but that I'm gonna call that a canopic jar, and I'm gonna say this little container here is also like a stone container. So how about this, Julie? Like, this looks like just debris to me, this little mound back here. Or did it just not mold real well? Oh, I need a little color somewhere. Yeah, it makes sense. But I'm going to paint the stone, like, with colors on it. So, that works. No, I haven't, Skelsey. I really don't want to have one in this apartment. For a new puppy, we're really far from grass, and we're on the second floor. So I'm waiting and saving up money because I want another Shiloh. So this apartment complex also is kind of hostile towards Shepherdy-derived breeds. So they let me have Kiri, but I don't know that they would let me have another one. So I'm waiting until we move to probably debris. Yeah, it looks like debris to me. These are all very crisp, and this is more debris-ish. And that makes sense. So yeah. Oh, and that's part of a falcon statue I see right there. See, this is all where you're getting down, where you're going to line and highlight stuff, is where you really get to see like all the little cool details, guys. As you can see in profile, you can see the little beak here and kind of the part of a falcon. It looks like a falcon. So that's pretty neat. Pretty neat. So I'm going to bring in my shadow around this other little gold bit, and now I can see that those gold bits break up the scenery. So I could choose, if you wanted to, you certainly could choose to paint the statue here and the container and the little jar here as different colors if you wanted to. I may keep it pretty downplayed because I don't want to make a lot of color on the base to distract from her. So I'm always looking like kind of for color for balance essentially here. Alrighty, let's see here. I want to add in a little bit of some darker shadows, I think. I want to really hit this archway, and I want to hit the bottom of that archway a little bit more. So, brown liner to the rescue. And just like before, I'm just going to check on my cracks to make sure that I can still see them, and are they dark enough. One thing you can do is darken a crack as it gets toward the outer edge, which makes it look like the crack is like kind of deepening and becoming more of an issue as it gets to the outer edge, and especially here where this is like chipped. So you could darken that breakage there to show that it was really much deeper. So cracks are not just cracks. If you think about how they were formed, you can get more realism into the piece. I do think I need to thin my brown liner a little bit. I'm leaving it close. I had it close to full strength, and I think it's just a little bit too much. I want to make sure that any surfaces that are like kind of facing away from the light, like the sides of things, are going to be darker. Hey, Inky, how's it going? Yeah, anyways, Kelsey, I do want to get another dog, and I want to get a Kiri relative. So it'll just be a little while. The housing market's so crazy right now that we're really not looking. And I also, David is a city mouse and I'm a country mouse, so we have to come to a compromise on where we're going to live. Because I don't mind being out a ways from a downtown, but he really likes to have certain things like within kind of walking distance or a very short, hop and a skip. So we kind of have to come to an arrangement on that one. Although it helps that living near downtown and cities these days, at least here in California, is tremendously expensive. So, I don't think we'll be able to get... We certainly won't be able to get, I think, a house as big as I would like with the dog. There are tiny houses available here. And I mean tiny houses. But, yeah. I just feel like, having lived in an apartment with a dog now and having lived in a house and a rented house with a dog, the house just makes it so much easier. And Kiri was a pretty model dog, but there were still neighbors that didn't like her, right? So that's the problem with apartment living. And that just gives you stress, right? I'm going to get these little cracks in here. I do need to thin that brown liner just a little more. I'm going to throw a little more water into it. I think it's around 1.5 to 1 now. It's not quite 1 to 1. 1 to 1 really thins down liner. Yeah. Even if we rented a house, I told David, I don't mind, if we rent instead of, buying just because he feels that he doesn't want to be pushed into buying right now. I'm cool with that. Because I rented my little house in Denton, and that worked out just fine. But I don't know. The other thing is we really like our apartment as far as the place it is. It is really close to downtown Mountain View. It's walking distance from a bunch of decent restaurants. It's right off of 2 big city parks. And right across the street is a big park that I walk in. And it's also, we have redwood trees growing right outside our balcony. It's a really nice apartment. So yeah, the new puppy will be put off for just a little bit. Yeah, space isn't one of them. Yeah, well, David used to live in San Francisco proper, so, tiny apartment. That was why when he first proposed I move in with him, I was like, in this apartment? Me and Kiri? I don't think we'll fit. This is pretty beautiful. So yeah, we have a very nice apartment. It is expensive. So, at some point you have to question whether you're gonna, pay rent or just put the money towards something that's actually an investment, right? So. But yeah, it is really nice here. And I love having the redwood trees outside in the morning when I do my yoga in front of the windows. It is a pretty darn beautiful place. And I do like that we can just walk to, you know, a couple of pretty good restaurants. I mean, I have a sushi joint less than a block away from my apartment. How am I still, like, how do I still have money in savings? Like, if you told me that 2 years ago, I would have been like, oh, sushi every day, it's on. Yeah. Oh, you're spoiled, Big Apple, big time. Yeah, I do miss having a house. I really do like being able to, like, decorate more like you really like it. I like having a yard, a small yard. I don't need a huge yard. Like, huge yard is just a bit overkill probably for me. A big enough yard for the dog, though, you know. So yeah, I do dream of having a house again, and once we have a house, I will start. I'm already stalking all the breeders I know. They're all my friends, so I can stalk them with impunity. So I'll always keeping an eye on where Kiri's bloodline is. So you know, so that I can get a Kiri descendant. All right, so one thing I do think, that got a little shiny. So sometimes, weirdly, if you thin the liners way down, you may need to add some matting agent. I found maybe it's just the batch that I have. Sometimes, like, liners take a lot of matting medium, so sometimes I think it settles out just a tiny bit. How many dogs with Kiri? Oh boy. She has... Let me think and paint at the same time. I'm going to mix up this matting medium just because my shadow here got a little bit... See how it's reflecting the light from outside? So it got a little bit shiny for some reason. So I'm going to grab some of my matting, my brush-on sealer, which I think will mat it down okay. Let me get this. And what you can do with this sealer, guys, if you do want to make sure that it goes dead matte, because usually with the brush-on sealer, if you just thin it with a little water, like 5 or 6 drops sealer, 1 drop water, it'll go to the same exact finish that the Master Series paint have. So it's a perfect finish at that point. If you use it straight out of the bottle, it's got a little bit more life. But you can also choose to matte it more with our anti-shine additive. This is the magic. So if you're working with another paint line that isn't the right level of matte for you, and it's just a little bit too glossy, anti-shine additive is made to work with that. But Planner, I know of, boy, she's got several grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the pool now. I think there's at least 3 different breeders working with her lines, with Kiri's lines right now. So as long as puppies move on from those lines. My big problem, though, with finding the right Kiri dog is I like the smooth coat Shilohs. Like, I don't like the long hair. That's what most people really love with Shilohs is the long coat because of how showy they are. But I am in love with the smooth coat, which is more the traditional German Shepherd coat because it's so easy to care for and it still looks really good. And so that's what Kiri was a smooth coat. But the problem is that because the smooth coat isn't as popular, not as many breeders work with smooth coats. And that means finding a smooth coat Kiri descendant could be difficult. Unless I can convince one of my buddies to like, you know, do the breeding. Yeah, upside of an apartment with a good landlord is that they fix things. I found that the house was kind of a 50-50. The house, they'll fix big things, but little things like garbage disposals tend to fall to the tenant. At least in Denton, that was my experience with the company that I was with. In general, though, they were really good about coming to fix things. I'm just adding a tiny bit of water in my sealer puddle. I also added a tiny schmear. When you do use the anti-shine additive, guys, add it in tiny increments. It's very powerful. But the other thing I have, Plainer, is I actually have Kiri's brother, Chester, who is also he was a show dog also, a very nice dog. We knew his owners and we hung out with them a lot. But he was collected and frozen, so I have his lineage. I own it. So should I get a girl in the future and decide to breed her, I could get, if I didn't get a Kiri lineage dog, I could then use her brother. So I have all the possible ways to get a Kiri Kiri relative, really. Yeah, I learned the hard way because Leo, we wanted to freeze, but by the time we got around to it, he had prostatitis, and because there was blood, they couldn't freeze. So Leo's kids, once they go, that's the last of Leo. Although Leo's sister does have descendants in the pool. So it's funny how you it's weird how your dogs go on. Okay, so I put a bit of that sealer over this, and I'm not seeing as much reflection. This is still a little wet, so I'm seeing a little bit of reflection, but it did dull it down a bit, which is nice. I think I'm going to do a mix, though, of this rich leather with some brown liner and warm up that shadow a little bit on the side of that brick because the other shadows here are looking a lot warmer. Leo was our dog, our old dog, that was Kiri's friend. So Leo was our first Shiloh, and Kiri was our second, and they had 3 puppies. But Leo was what everybody thinks of. Hold on, I can give you the quintessential Leo picture. Leo was the dog everybody thinks of as a Shiloh Shepherd. So, boom. That's Leo. That's me when I was older or younger and fatter. So, that's a Shiloh Shepherd. Like, when you say Shiloh Shepherd, that's a Shiloh Shepherd. Leo was a multiple Best in Show winning grand champion. We showed him. He got us into dog showing because he was so gorgeous. That pretty much like our experienced dog friends were like, you need to show that dog. And so that's how I became, briefly involved in the breed as a breeder. But yeah, so that's a Shiloh. And then Kiri, of course, was the shorter coated version. So I mixed a little bit of my liner with my rich leather. It makes a little bit of a greenish brown, but it's still a little bit warmer than that original brown liner was. So I think I might even want to thin down my rich leather and get it just a little bit more. I'm just being fussy with that shadow because I like all my other shadows so much, but that one brick is bugging me. So fluffy. Yeah, he had the really heavy plush coat. The proper Shiloh plush coat actually is shorter than that and easier to manage. But you have to breed for it. And so, we still get dogs that are kind of throwbacks with that old, because there's Malamute and also, our really fuzzy Flock Guardian breed behind Shilohs, you still get some of those throwbacks in the genetics. There we go. Now I like that shadow a lot better. See, now the shadow on the brick is reading more like the shadow on the rock, and I'm much happier with it. And it's stretch time. Look, I remember to stretch. I'm going to do that actually now before I dive back into hitting the rest of these shadows. Talk about a little bit. We need a little bit more shadow on the side of this one, although it is getting a little light. So we have to kind of look at those partially exposed to the top light areas now. If you've been sitting around, please come up and stretch. Get a drink. Oh no, Big Apple, you have the high maintenance kitties. My half Siamese, Mama-san's son, really loved to fetch when he was younger. He kind of grew out of it. He was just he grew into a more traditional cat as he got older, but when he was a young cat, he liked to fetch. I would just roll up little balls of paper and he loved them. Oh, that's really fun, Medzik. That's a very smart cat. Stretch, everybody, stretch. Oh, my back. I tweaked my back yesterday because in yoga, we actually did our yoga with the YouTube, and I was feeling invulnerable. So there's this technique in Pilates, and it's in yoga too. In Pilates, it's called roll like a ball. And I always looked at that sucker and thought, if ever there was a recipe for back pain, it's that. Why would you ever do it? And I was right. I shouldn't have done it. I didn't seriously, hurt myself, but it definitely, got a twinge, and I'm like, I'm done! So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that move. So now, in the future, I will not even give it a chance. There are so many other moves that can help my core without, The problem is just that it's just, yeah, just like you're rolling on your spine. Like, I do not believe in this movement. Why? Big question. WTF, why? Yeah. Well, cats like to do things when they like to do them, and then, not afterwards. That be cats, right? Cats be cats. All right. A little bit of stretches on the floor, and then we will resume. There we go. Alrighty. But yeah, cats are so funny. I'm pretty sure I'll get another cat again, but after I can no longer have big dogs. I do love my big dogs. Although right now the only living things I have are plants, which I'm somehow managing not to kill, so that's it's a favorable sign, right? All right, so we've got light coming down and it's hitting the tops of things and we can see that. But we've also got surfaces like this and this that are somewhat like toward the light. They're not as sharply toward the light. They're still going to get a highlight, but they're maybe going to get not quite as much of a highlight as the other places are. So let's actually start working with our yellow, our off yellow here. I think I'm pretty sure that I mixed in some desert sand and a bit of that, and then a bit of white. It's just that, like, I find as I get older that it takes a lot of energy to really take care of living things. Like, my dogs were never really accessories to me. Like, I believed in training them and keeping engaged, keeping them engaged and, working with them and things like that. And that takes a lot of time and energy. So right now I'm just kind of... And cats don't take quite as much energy, but it's still a living thing you're taking care of and that you have to worry about if you're going to go travel and things like that, so... Yeah, it is rough when they pass, Shadow Raven. Kiri was rough. But having your... The thing is that having your pet outlive you is, I think, even rougher, because it's rough on the pet. Like, Kiri, after Leo passed... And Leo passed about a year and a half before Kiri did. But Kiri never wagged her tail again after Leo passed. Like, that's just... They mourn. They grieve. So, I don't think I could do that. Like... That's the only problem I could see with that. Like, that would stop me. But it is so hard when they go. That is true. Yeah. It is rough, Suro. Oh, I dipped the wing again. This is the problem with having the wings attached. See, guys? This is why I don't attach things. Is the more things you have attached, the more things you have to dip in your palette. These wings are just that way. They are just that way. All right, let's see here. I think I want to thin this just a little bit more. When you've added white to things, or when you're dealing with a really light color, like with this pale yellow sand color I've got. Oh no. Random singles. No, just a year and a half, sorry. If that wasn't clear. Well, we got Leo, and then 3 months later we got Kiri. So she had known Leo since, like, she had Leo there since she was a baby. So, oh, that's really funny, Zen, that your cat would bring you the laser pointer. That's pretty fantastic. Cats are smart. Like, people underestimate. Just because cats aren't as sociable as dogs, we don't always see, as a general rule, we don't always see, I think, how smart they really are. So I've got to be careful here. I want to keep a little bit of shadow so I can keep this texture going on right here. But I also need there to be light on these stones. So that's where maybe some glazing comes in to keep a little bit of that shadow texture going, but to still bring in some light. Your bird used to... That's ridiculous. Oh, nice. Yay, Minnie. Yeah, they are, Max Styles. I mean, animals are more often, especially social animals, are more conscious of hierarchy, right? Like, because that's just ground into them. It's like, it's part of living. And some dogs really aren't like that anymore, because we've been breeding dogs for specialty stuff for a long time, but often even with dogs, it's like, there is a hierarchy thing. Some breeds more than others. So getting these little stones and bringing those up too, you can see clearly where the gold is now, so we'll get around to that gold. And I need to take down some of the darkness on top of this stone because it really just wouldn't be there. Just a little bit on this side is cool, but a lot of this area would be lighter. And you can, when you're doing a top-down lighting, this is really easy to check, right? It's like, just look at the model from top down. Having the camera here helps a lot, but I could also just look at it and see where I need to highlight more. The more subtle your highlights are, the less you're going to look like you're outside on a sunny day. Like, the more dull your highlights are, the less you're going to be showing that you have a strong light source. Yeah, for sure, Crows. That's kind of my feeling on it. Yeah, same with Dog Shadow Raven. Like, we learned that the hard way, like Thorn, our trouble dog, who John Bono and his wife Farah now own. Thorny, like, we played with him with toys with ballistic nylon, made out of ballistic nylon when he was a puppy, because he was such a powerful chewer and he would just destroy stuff. Unfortunately, backpacks are also made of ballistic nylon. So then backpacks were chewables, right? Because it's the same material. So you have to be careful about that. We couldn't even blame him on that. On that one count, we could not blame Thorn. Because we had sent him mixed signals. That dog destroyed a lot of stuff. Yes, cats will totally plot your downfall. I agree. I still love the article that I think it was the New York Times. It was a New York Times like opinion article in the, like, an editorial column, and there was one article written by the dog and one article written by the cat. And the dog was like, "I love having you home. Stay home forever." And the cat was like, "Please God, go back to work." That's probably my favorite little pandemic article that I saw during the whole thing. It's really funny. I do love the animals, so. It is an awesome meme. Oh, you made toys of your animals. That's really cool. I know one of the people who had one of our puppies, and actually Blazy, Kiri's daughter, I had to rehome 2 of my dogs when I got divorced because I couldn't keep more than 2 in the house I was renting. And so Blazy went to people who owned Leo and Kiri's son. And what they do is when a pet passes, like they know an artist, like is a good friend of one, or they're good friends of one, they have a painting. And every time a pet passes, the artist will add the pet to the painting. So the painting just gets more and more filled in. Because they love animals. They always have at least 4 dogs in the time I've known them. Which is, I think, a really nice tribute. We did have a painting done of Leo while he was still alive. Leo's got miniatures and painting, and Kiri doesn't have anything. But I did start a colored pencil of Leo, because that's kind of how I tend to do things. But I haven't worked on it, because I've been so busy with other stuff. So adding a little bit of highlight here on this facing side. Yeah. Oh, yes. Text messages from pets. Yeah, you have the opposite cats, right? You have the, oh, please, oh, please stay home cats. The really sociable cats. The cats that are more like dogs. I'm going to block in a little bit of this, let's see what I can do. Yeah, I need to do a little bit of wet blending. This is a big flat area. And if I wanted to take a lot of time, I could slowly layer it up. But I kind of want a faster result, so I'm going to do a little bit of a wet blend here. Oh no. I do have staccato for Kiri. You're right, Chibi. Kiri finally got a mini. Even if it looks like puppy Kiri. But I like to do, I've done colored pencil portraits of my friends' animals that I've passed before. So it's just like taking the time, because CP, colored pencil takes, it's really gives you beautiful results, and I do love the medium, but it does take a long time to build up all the layers and the textures. So a bit of light here coming down on the side of that stone because it is still facing upward. And I'm mixing desert stone and my golden highlight color for that. The highlight color is a mixture of desert sand, NMM gold highlight, and white and Osirian sand. So it's quite a complex mixture. I could probably get there with fewer steps. This often happens where I try to build a color that's in my head and I just keep throwing other colors at it until I match it. And then afterwards, when I kind of break down, I'm like, oh, I only needed to use 3 paints for this instead of 4 or 5. Or I only needed to use 2 paints for this instead of 4. So coming in around all these little cracks. Oh no. That's really funny. You always wonder what animals are thinking. Ah, I dipped my wing again. Ah. 1 second. Let me see if I can save it. Or if I'm going to have to... The nice thing about my wingtips is that they're all pure black. So it's really easy to touch them up. I'm probably going to have to touch that one up. Silly Anne. Oh well. It is what it is. It's because the Sphinx is so big and chunky. Leo used to watch the Westminster Dog Show with me. Like, Kiri was never interested. Like, she understood that TV was, like, just a thing, and she wasn't really into it. But, Leo actually would watch the dogs on the screen. So now we're seeing the light come up on those stones. There we go. Cats love to be sociable in the middle of the night. They're like, hey, you're boring now. What's wrong? Hey. Oh dear. I just noticed that there's what looks like a tiny hand peeking out from under this stonework. Like, it's probably not a tiny hand. It's probably just debris. And for some reason, it took on the appearance of little fingers. But it does kind of amuse me that there might be somebody buried under here. I probably am, like, just, I don't know, but that looks like a little tiny hand to me. In which case, the Sphinx is sitting on somebody's head. Which would be very cat-like. So maybe it's true. Hey, Roll One! How's it going? You are giving me a raid. Thank you. We really appreciate raids. We're kind of like talking about everything under the sun. Mostly right now we're talking about pets. But we're talking about everything under the sun while I'm trying to paint these stones to be a little bit brighter. Because I've got some... So I want to make the appearance of light really falling on them, and then this is in shadow and stuff like that. So I'm trying to be consistent about where my highlights are placed. It'll be a hand if I paint it like a hand. I don't think I want to do that. But yeah, welcome Raiders. I'm Anne. I work for Reaper, obviously. Right now I am having a hard time painting all these rocks with Sphinx's wings on, and I keep dipping her wings in my paint because, sadly, she's very large. This is why I don't put wings on and other stuff like that until the very end of the model. I probably, if I would have known I was going to dip them into the paint so much, I would have left them off until I was done with the base. But I glued her in, and now I'm stuck. Yeah, it's good to see. Actually, that reminds me. It's good to see you, Planer. How are you feeling? Are you doing well? Or is it how are you having a week? I've kind of had a week with a capital W. So, no pressure to have a good week. We all have off weeks. But it's nice to see you. Good. Yeah, so we're doing the absolute, like, you know, like, boring thing of painting rocks, but essentially we're trying to paint it so that we can really see the light and shadow on each particular piece, so that we can give that illusion of sunlight falling down. We missed you too. I haven't decided what to do with this little clay jar yet. I may actually put a pattern on it. So I'm going to leave the clay jar for now. And some of these things look like they might also be like little jars or containers. But they're kind of squished back there, so I'm not sure what they are. So I'm going to just kind of paint them just in general as stone. Sometimes that's just a solution, like if you're painting a base that has a lot of stuff on it, and you really can't tell what some of the stuff is, just painting it as stone is okay. And that's in shadow. That's in shadow. This is gravel. We have the sculptors in the chat, so if Julie says that it's debris, it's debris. Yeah, sometimes that's really rough, Twisted Oma. Like when I was still having my major health issues, like I just remember that in the week or two going up to a surgery, like it was just like my brain froze. You just go one day at a time, and then it's such a relief when you're done. And then you just have to recover. Yeah, it could be old gum, but in that case, I'm going to say it's fossilized. Nara. Just kind of trying to figure out all the stuff and highlight it accordingly. And, you know, there definitely is a limit as far as, like, if you don't want to... Oh, I dipped the wing again. I just go in and dip it in water and try to clean it off. But at this point, since the wing has been dipped and I haven't been able to clean it off, I should probably just ignore it and paint the thing over. There's a limit as to how much detail you really need to go into on this. It's rocks. Like, don't overthink it. Feel free to rough it in and just do it. I'm taking some pains because I like this model and I want to make it look really, really nice. Even the rocks. So, but you don't have to go to those lengths. This is just me. And I also enjoy painting rocks, as we've noticed before, so... For me, it is enjoyable to relax and paint terrain bits or scenery. And I really like elaborately sculpted bases that really put the character into an environment. There we go. We're getting there. But even with me, some of this little debris piles are just going to be, I'm going to stipple it and move on. All right, this is getting there. Some of this is under the wing, so I'm not going to try to bring up the highlights as much. Yeah, it's a lot of detail and it's well sculpted, right? So it rewards attention. Alrighty. So anything that's partially facing the light is also going to get a highlight. You can decide if it's going to get as much of a highlight or not. I'm going to go pretty close with these. But I think I'm a little more yellow on stuff that's directly facing the light. Which is another way that you can do it. You could paint everything, you know, that's more or less facing upward lighter, and then for things that are really perpendicular to your light source, you can bring in that yellow. More of a yellow color to show that it's getting more of that. Because I definitely have some very golden color on some of these areas that are really out under the sun. So looking at it from above, I think I'm getting pretty good there. Then I just need to bring in just one level of minor highlight back here, because this area is really, you can see how the wing is casting a shadow over this area. So right side up, Suru. I mean, side might also be good, but you never want to store dropper bottles upside down. The reason is all the particulate matter comes down and can clog your our aperture because of, remember, the hole that the paint comes out of is very, very fine. You don't want to do that. You don't have to. The reason to store paint bottles upside down is if you have pots. Because with a pot, you have all of this round surface, like a huge surface, that is allowing air to slowly leach into the bottle. And so if you store it upside down, the liquid comes down and covers that seam and kind of acts to keep the air pushed out a little bit more so you can keep your paint better with a pot. Also, if you flip your pot over and you open it up, it's got a huge, area. That's not going to get blocked by a big plug of paint. But in these dropper bottles, they're meant, the dropper system, because you got both an inner lid and an outer lid, it's meant to keep your paint good. This is going to last 10 years longer than this is anyway. So there's no reason to store them upside down, and doing so can lead to clogs. Sides are probably fine. It's just you don't want to do this, in my opinion. You can, Quindy, but yeah, there's Quindy with the advertisement for the Poke Tool. Yes, it's absolutely, you can do that, but also consider, okay, so another thing is, if you do get a lot of goop, like up around your tip, you're going to have all that goop in this little area. So your agitator is down here, and your agitator works very much better if it can have more room to move. So if you've got a clog or a goop that's up here, it's harder for the agitator to dislodge it. So that's another reason not to do this. There are several reasons. It's not an emergency if you do, because like Quindy pointed out, you can always Poke Tool it, but it'll just make it easier if you don't. Just on the sides, mostly. They're random pendrake, right? But they're not in the factory for very long. We do have... we have flips, right? But somebody who sticks a bunch of their paint nose down in a box for 5 years and only takes out a few colors is going to find it more of a problem. There is no color at Reaper that doesn't at least cycle through a batch in 1 year, I don't think. So we always have flip, whereas at home, you don't. But yeah, they just go in paint tubs. So some of them will be pointed more up or down. But again, it's the amount of time they spend at that angle. And also they'll get kind of shaken around, right? Because we pull the tub out and it shakes things up, and we, grab a paint, put it back. And then as paint gets depleted, the paint kind of moves. It kind of, moves in the tub to fill in the space that you've taken paint out of and all the rest of it. So it gets some movement. Yeah, this is more like if you're storing your paint, and we all know that we have bottles that we don't reach for months at a time, and sometimes years at a time. Maybe you bought a color, especially if you own a lot of different colors, you're going to naturally tend to gravitate towards some that you really like more than others. And so the paints that are still useful but that you're just not using right now are going to sit around sometimes for years, and that's where you can get more problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to block in these areas in shadow. I am going to block in a little bit of highlight, and then I'm probably going to glaze over it with the desert stone. And if I really want to, I could glaze over it again with brown liner to really show that this area is in shadow. But I want some details to come out, so I want to do that. I want to do a kind of a quick brush highlight first to show that there are details there. I don't just all want to paint it dark. And then when it gets to the back here, then we've got some light coming in on this side. So just going to do a little bit of stippling probably here. To bring out a little bit of detail. Then we'll do a glaze and a glaze. That's every 5 years or so, every 3 to 5 years, add a few drops of water. Crows, probably about 10 drops of water. So if you shake them every year or every 2 years, and then you add water every 3 to 5 years, your paints will stay good indefinitely. I've even been able to do that with some Vallejo colors, and that's, it's a lot harder with those. They tend to fall out of solution a little bit easier. Yeah, I mean, if you really want your dropper bottle paints to last, you do need to shake them every once in a while. Just that's the same with all paint. And with paint pots, you need to add water more frequently. I probably add, in order to keep this GW metallic that I like, in order to keep it good in its bottle for all these years, I probably add like five or 10 drops of water every year or so. And I store it on its top. Bye, Shadow Raven. Have a good lunch. I think actually instead of doing 2 glazes, I'm going to mix some of my brown liner with my desert stone to get kind of that color right there. It's a dark grayish tan. And I'm going to add some more water. Boop. So it's really a glaze, really colored water. And then I'm going to paint that over it instead of doing 2 glazes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, some of them, I mean, they do... Some are worse than others. I find the oranges and yellows to be very persnickety. Alright, I'm just kind of painting a glaze over the areas that are falling under that wing. To darken them down just a bit. So you can see that shadow falling, but we still have some highlights on there, so you can also still see some details. And then actually, because that area is in shadow, I can take my brown liner and do some heavier shading back there. You mean the RIP, Pendrake? The RIP? RIP is a gaming thing, which pretty much means game over. It's a slang. I watch enough I follow enough esports to like know the lingo. It's like doing the F in chat. All right, I'm going to put in a little bit darker shading on some of this stonework. Oh, word. Okay. Ah. I missed it. I'm too distracted painting rocks. I'll let you guys deal with it. So there we've got, see, I can afford to do more shading in these areas because these stones are under the cast shadow of the wing. So not only do I knock down my highlights, but I also deepen my shading. I still leave suggestions because you're going to get bounced light. You're still going to be able to see some details back here, but we can darken a lot of this. Just bringing in some warm color I see on the back of this big stone here, and then I'm going to bring in a little bit darker because that's away from the light. So anything turning perpendicular to the light or away from the light should get a darker shadow. So a lot of that under the wing. This even might get a little bit more than I've got it on. Let me get a little bit more water in here. And there's a lot of tuning involved in this, just like for those of you who are watching my personal stream yesterday on the Sky Earth NMM. There's always a lot of, I kind of block it in and then I look at it and I decide, oh, well, there's a shadow. That would be in shadow. That would be in shadow. Yes. Thank you, mods. Mods do a great job. Our mods do a great job. We really appreciate it too. Mods are the unsung heroes of Twitch chat, really. Keeping things civil. When those of us who are trying to paint rocks are distracted by painting rocks. So again, just bringing in a little more shadow there. And then when we get back here between her wings, we're going to have a little area. We're going to get a little more light. But you can see how much of a shadow she casts right back here on this stone. So really, just these stones that are coming out from her a bit are getting a bit of light. So you can use this to like double check your lighting. And on the back of the model, it's okay if you decide that you want to do a lot of shadow and a lot of dark to make that very apparent where the front is in light and the back is in shadow. You see that? It's really clear. So if you want to bring out details then back here, but you don't want to bring up much highlight, you're going to be making your shadows darker rather than your highlights much lighter. You like me to be able to paint my rocks in peace. Thank you, Quindy. I really like being able to paint my rocks in peace. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to glaze this warm color over a lot of area. Perpendicular area that I was kind of like... Because there will be some reflected light coming up onto this from some of these rocks back here. So I do want a little bit of a warmer shadow here. So one of the things to notice when you're out in nature is that, like, I sit by the fountain to do my meditation every day, so I can watch the light and on the water and the rocks. And if a rock has its back to the light, like if you look at the backside of a rock that's away from the light and it's just water there, then the shadow that's reflected back up will be very cool. It'll be very cold. It'll have a lot of blue in it from sky. But if you have another rock or part of like the rim of the fountain that the light is catching, then the shadow on the backside of that rock is going to be warm because it's going to be getting that reflected sunlight. So you can work little bits of realism into your work like that by warming up shadows. If you know that you're going to have some of these rocks in light, it can you can apply that reflected warmth of the sunlight. And we want to darken down that fissure in the rock so that it really there. But I want that to really show itself as a dark crack. And so also I think I'm going to darken this area up top. Yeah, it is a really nice sculpt. Julie really did a wonderful job on it. It really helps to set off the model, right? It's like, it's got good detail on it, but it's not too much. And a lot of it is stonework, so you can just paint it, you know, to accent the Sphinx, to show her off rather than to distract from her. You never want your base to get too distracting. So when I do put in some painted areas on these stones, some areas that still has like some red or green paint clinging to them, I'm going to be doing it with an eye toward not being overwhelming, but just repeating some of the colors from the Sphinx. So probably I'm going to do some ochre and some red, and I'm probably not going to do the green because there's no green on Sphinxy. There's blue. So So I'll probably do those colors, and that will, you know, give us enough to tie the Sphinxy into the base, but we won't overwhelm her. We never want to pull attention away from our beautiful model. We want to choose ways to accentuate her, to really show her off. It's like, I think some jewelry is too garish, because then everybody stares at the jewelry and not you. It's kind of like that. Unless, of course, you don't want people to look at you, and you would rather they look at, you know, the giant opal belt buckle that you have. That's a thing. I always laugh when I go to Santa Fe, because the jewelry style there is so over the top. And I love the stones that they use, but I always wish that they could downplay it a bit more. But that would not be Santa Fe. Oh, I think we've got more little gold pieces back here. Yeah, and it's a fine point, right, Julie? You got to give some areas for color, as you mentioned, with the gold coins. And you want to, you know, give enough detail that it's fun to paint, and enough texture that people can paint it very simply and quickly if they don't want to put a lot of time into it. You know, I think this is actually an extremely good base, because honestly, if you just base coated it with desert sand and gave it a wash of brown liner with a little bit of desert stone in it, it would probably look just fine, and you could go and move on, right? Like, you don't have to do all this work, but you can choose to, and the base rewards the work. Like, I think I'm really happy with the front of this base right now. Just got to make sure I'm getting all of my perpendicular surfaces, you know, shaded appropriately. That's my big challenge now, is probably I need to bring in more shadow on this rock, for example. But yeah, I'm liking how this is looking from this angle. And this is the main viewing angle, so that means I'm real happy about it. Then on the back, just a little bit more. And I won't bring it up as much here in the back. But I'll do some stippling on the stones to bring in a little bit of light. Where they're kind of sticking out away from the giant tomb here. Just to give us a little bit of light back here. Yeah, it's a fine balance. I mean, I think that it's something a good sculptor thinks about for sure. Because it's composition. And I think some people who are really good at conversion, like I mentioned this about Bryce B. Kokenar in the chat the other day, is I think his free card is definitely composition, because he does heavy conversions and scratch sculpts in addition to being a very good painter. And his dioramas are great because he just has that great sense for the dynamic. So I think good sculptors also have that excellent sense for good composition. When they're composing a model and its pose to make it look interesting and dynamic and balanced. Yeah, did you put a tiny hand in the front, or is it just a random artifact, Julie? Because I found a piece like coming out from underneath the rubble that looked suspiciously like a hand. Like some poor guy got squashed under there. Which is funny as blazes, but you have done hidden body parts. But so where I'm looking is on top of this little box. Like there's just there's little spread, like they could almost be fingers, just on the top of this little box down here. Let's see. Do you see them? There's fingers. You'd have to look at the green, yeah. Well, I'm going to leave it blank for now until I decide if I want to paint it like some guy's poor hand, because it would probably be a skeletal hand at this point. And that I could do. I could totally put a little skeletal hand, and that would be funny. Alrighty, I think I've got enough shadows on this now. I need to bring that a little bit darker. So yeah, when you're trying to like make a convincing lighting, when you're trying to do realistic lighting on your piece, you're often going to go back and forth and kind of reassess and go, well, that doesn't look quite right. Okay, well, that looks right now. Or, hey, this needs a little bit more. You know, and sometimes you'll put a little bit more and then you're like, okay, it didn't need that much, you know. Yeah, it could be a scallop design. You're right, D. Clerman. Rogue tries to steal the box, rocks fall, everyone dies, yes. And that's when they hired the Sphinx. Sphinx is like, well, now all the traps have been triggered. I guess we need to guard this some other way. With a voracious, like, riddle-slinging monster. But she's so cute. Yeah, they are, Dabber. Luthor, a natural hairbrush, a sable brush, won't curl at the tip unless you leave it in your paint water, which you should never, ever, ever do. Never, ever leave your brushes point down in the paint water. If you aren't using a natural sable, it's because synthetic brushes, which are, I call them Taklon, but that's the name for a brand of synthetic. But synthetic brushes naturally curl at the tips. You can see how these are splaying out and curving at the edge here. It's the way that plastic abrades as you work with it, because plastic, they haven't quite figured out how to make it wear quite the same way as natural hair. Natural hair won't do that because of the way that it's structured. So because I'm using a natural hair brush, it's not going to do that, like I said, unless I left it in the paint water. So a synthetic brush is plastic bristles, and you can take really good care of them and the degeneration will slow down, but it will still eventually hook. Good, Crows. Yeah, I mean, the desert stone color and desert sand colors were based on photographs of Egyptian soil, so they're, I think, a pretty good starting point if you want a natural stone color that's kind of warm, you know, since rocks come in so many different colors. But yeah, so I'm not sure what brand of brushes or type of brushes you've got, Luthor, but if they are not a sable, then they're gonna eventually erode. Some of them will erode faster than others, and it depends on how you a little bit on how you treat them as far as how long it takes them to kind of go south. Just getting little bits of stonework here to kind of notice that I've still got my bright light is still on the front of the figure. And although I'm bringing up these rocks back here, I'm not bringing them up to the same extent that I'm bringing up the front, which has a lot of light on it. So there is a little bit of light coming back to here. But Sphinxy is casting his shadows. So yeah, I mean, the difference is, and you can do either, right? Like Dr. Faust was saying the other day when he was on a stream, very briefly stopped in on my own stream. But Doc Faust has always used synthetics, and he just believes in buying cheap brushes and just going through them. So you can make that, you know, you can do that. But if you take a decent care of your brushes and you don't leave them in the paint water, saving up and buying a couple of really nice Kolinsky sables, if you take good care of these, they last for years. And I still think even at like 15 to 18 bucks a brush, it's going to last you longer than your pack of 20 synthetics if you want that really good tip. I mean, the answer, if you really prefer to just use cheap brushes for the majority of your work, but you still want one that keeps a tip, is just pick up one or two of the good brushes, save those for when you need the fine detail work, and otherwise just paint with the cheap stuff. I use a range of sizes, and every brand has different sizing, Luthor, so I can't give you really a general sense, but I can kind of show you what I use. I use 3 different sizes of brush, and they range. Let me get little baby brush. Baby brush, where are you? There you are. Tiny brush. So all these guys have been around the block. They've all been in use for longer than a year. They all still hold perfect points, although this one is definitely breaking down more now. And this guy is also. I and part of that is just how much I paint. But this is the range of sizes. So like, do I have a Reaper? I don't have a Reaper like right out here, but if I were to, so these are all different here. 2 of these are actually size 1s, but they're different brands, and so they're very different. So both of these bigger brushes are size 1, but one's a Da Vinci and one's a Raphael. And you get the difference there. So some brands, the 1 will be smaller and some will be larger, but 1 is as big as I go. Some people do paint with a size 2 from some brands. I just find it's a little big for me. This size 1 of the Da Vinci is very comparable to a size 0 in Winsor & Newton Series 7. So in general, I usually say from a 0 to like an aught 2 or aught 5, depending on the brand. Like, this is a 000 Da Vinci, and I would never use anything smaller than this. This is my absolute smallest brush. But in Reaper Kolinsky's, this is actually more like a size aught 10. So I usually say, like, go 0 or 00 to start with. And usually in almost all brands of Kolinsky Sable, you're looking for watercolor and round in general. But usually a 0 or a 00, which 00 is the one size smaller than 0, is going to keep you pretty well, depending on brand. There we go. So let's back out on Sphinxy real quick. We haven't backed out for a while. And hey, it's time to end the stream too. It is late. Oh, Italian Art Store. Yeah, I used to order from them, actually, D. Clearman. They actually used to carry Da Vinci. They were almost the only store I could find Da Vinci on. Now that's no longer the case. But yeah, Italian Art Store, at least back in the day, they were a good brand, good store. Sometimes they charge a little more because they're a smaller store than Dick Blick. Everybody is, right? But I got quality brushes from them, so... Yeah, 10 aught and 10-0 is like the smallest I would use. But that's my... And what you're going to find is that everybody... Try everything because you are going to find what works for you. Some people use really tiny brushes and that's the way they learn to control paint. And so they're great with that. And big brushes to them feel clumsy and like they have less control. And some people only like the big brushes and get frustrated with the small brushes and how often they have to reload them and what they're, the things they can't do. So the best I can do is say, maybe if you have friends who paint or you come to ReaperCon, ask people if you can kind of try out a couple different sizes of brush and see what you kind of feel like you like and start with one of those. Hey, Alpha, I'm doing good. Okay, so you're painting really tiny stuff, Planer. That makes sense. But yeah, every brush is going to be different. Bigger brushes are going to hold more fluid, but they're also going to mean you have to unload it more if you're using thinner paint. A lot more. You'll have to really unload it or you're going to lose control of your paint. Whereas the small brushes give you a lot of control, but you have to use like thinner paint on them because you need the water to keep the paint wet. Because if you use a thicker paint with a tiny brush, the paint will dry on the bristles before it ever gets to the miniature. So the brushes, we could do half a show on brushes. I should do a video on YouTube with brushes. Yeah. And 0 to 000 for most brands is a pretty good range. So like I said, that 000 that I have in Da Vinci Series 10 is equivalent to a 10-0 in Reaper. So... But yeah, expanding my YouTube with some little tiny clips of videos and tips is one of the things on my list, Dabber. Although, if you're on my Patreon, go and watch the Unloading Your Brush video. It'll help. And, of course, if you want other free that does talk about brushes and loading and unloading, Thinning MSP Paints on Reaper's YouTube is my ReaperCon class from last year. And I did it that way so that it would be up forever because it's really useful information. Yes, thank you, Quindy. I do have a Patreon for those of you who do not know. And it is patreon.com/paintingbig. And Quindy was just nice enough to link it in the bottom in the chat. So if you are curious, I do have some free stuff up so you can take a look at it and decide whether you like my stuff. And I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for coming over. It's Friday. We have a weekend. We can actually all relax. So I hope you all have a wonderful one. And we'll be working on Lizette. Next time we come back, we'll be working on Lizette and trying to figure out like exactly what green her hair is going to be. Yeah, super guys. Thank you very much. This was a fun stream. This was a good one. So yeah, have a great time. And do we have a raid queued up, Reaper? Who are we raiding? I can't go to the off screen until we're like queuing up. Sky Daddy! Yay! Sky is so happy. Okay, Sky is a great way to end the week. Fantastic. Thanks, folks. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you again on Monday.